आउनेछ। त्योभन्दा अगाडि चाहिँ चौतारीको अब आउने छलफलहरूको बारेमा छोटोमा म भन्छु। त्यो चाहिँ यहाँहरूको अगाडि लिफलेट पनि छ, त्यसमा पनि हेर्न सक्नुहुन्छ। चौतारीको अर्को छलफल चाहिँ आगामी आइतबार 9 नोभेम्बरमा कार्तिक 23मा यो पनि रिसर्च सेमिनार सिरिज अन्तर्गतको छलफल हो। सो छलफलको शीर्षक रहेको छ एट द क्रसरोड्स अफ आर्ट, आर्किटेक्चर एन्ड हेरिटेज रिहाउजिङ द आइटम बाहा पेन्टिङ्स भन्ने विषयमा आजाद थापाले प्रेजेन्टेसन दिँदै हुनुहुन्छ। त्यसै गरेर 16 नोभेम्बर कार्तिक 30को रिसर्च सेमिनार अन्तर्गत चाहिँ वेद प्रसाद गिरीले थिङ्किङ अबाउट थिङ्किङ लेसन्स फ्रम फिलोसफी, रिलिजन एन्ड कग्निटिभ साइन्सको बारेमा प्रस्तुति दिँदै हुनुहुन्छ। र त्यसपछि 23 नोभेम्बर अर्थात् मङ्सिर 7 गतेको रिसर्च सेमिनार सिरिजमा चाहिँ माइकल हटले द फर्स्ट नेपाली दलित राइटर्स भन्ने विषयमा प्रस्तुति दिँदै हुनुहुन्छ। यी छलफलमा पनि यहाँहरूले आफ्नो समय रुचि भएको खण्डमा सहभागिता जनाउन सक्नुहुन्छ। त्यस पछाडि चौतारीको एनुअल कन्फरेन्स 2025को लागि चाहिँ रजिस्ट्रेसन ओपन भइसकेको छ। यसको लागि चाहिँ रजिस्ट्रेसनको लागि डेडलाइन नोभेम्बर 21 सम्म रहेको छ। यहाँहरूले रजिस्ट्रेसनको लागि चाहिँ 1000 रुपैयाँ चाहिँ तिर्नुपर्नेछ। यसको डिटेल्समा हेर्नको लागि चाहिँ चौतारीको वेबसाइटमा त्यसै गरी हाम्रो फेसबुक, ट्विटरमा गएर यहाँले डिटेलमा हेर्न सक्नुहुन्छ र त्यसै अनुसार रजिस्ट्रेसन गरेर सहभागी हुन सक्नुहुनेछ। यति भनिसकेपछि हामी आजको विषयवस्तुमा म प्रवेश गर्न चाहन्छु। यहाँहरूले देखिसक्नु भएको छ अगाडि फ्लायरमा पनि हाम्रो छलफलको शीर्षक रहेको छ प्रिभेन्सन अफ ह्यारेसमेन्ट इन हायर एजुकेसन इन्स्टिट्युट्स अफ नेपाल, लर्निङ्स एन्ड रिफ्लेक्सन्स फ्रम इफोर्ट अगेन्स्ट ह्यारेसमेन्ट एट किङ्स कलेज भन्ने शीर्षक रहेको छ। यो शीर्षकमा चाहिँ हामीसँग दुईजना वक्ताहरूले आफ्नो प्रस्तुति दिँदै हुनुहुन्छ। पहिलो वक्ता हुनुहुन्छ स्वेच्छा राजभण्डारीजी। उहाँ चाहिँ किङ्स कलेजमा आबद्ध हुनुहुन्छ र त्यहाँको अफिस अफ स्टेट एन्ड रेस्पेक्टेबल लर्निङ OSRL को चाहिँ डिपार्टमेन्ट हेड हुनुहुन्छ। र हाम्रो अर्को वक्ता हुनुहुन्छ सुशोभन चिमोरिया। उहाँ पनि किङ्स कलेजमा नै आबद्ध हुनुहुन्छ। यो जुन अफिस अफ सेफ एन्ड रेस्पेक्टेबल लर्निङ डिपार्टमेन्टको चाहिँ उहाँ प्रोजेक्ट कोअर्डिनेटर हुनुहुन्छ र एजुकेटर अनि एक्टिभिस्ट पनि हुनुहुन्छ। उहाँहरू दुईजनाको परिचय चाहिँ म यतिमै सीमित गर्न चाहन्छु। बाँकी चाहिँ अहिले यहाँहरूले आफ्नो प्रस्तुतिको दौरानमा पनि थप भन्न सक्नुहुनेछ। र खासमा यो आजको छलफलमा चाहिँ उहाँहरूले किङ्स कलेजमा आधारित रहेर चाहिँ नेपालको हायर एजुकेसन इन्स्टिट्युट्समा चाहिँ ह्यारेसमेन्ट सम्बन्धी कस्तो खालको कामहरू भइरहेको छ, विशेष गरी प्रिभेन्सनको लागि त्यसमा चाहिँ उहाँहरूले काम गरिरहनु भएको छ र त्यसको नै लर्निङ र रिफ्लेक्सनको आधारमा चाहिँ उहाँहरूले आज आफ्नो प्रस्तुति दिनुहुनेछ। हाम्रो यो कार्यक्रम चाहिँ सराजै दुईवटा चरणमा हुन्छ। पहिलो चरणमा उहाँहरू दुईजनाले करिब 40 देखि 45 मिनटमा आफ्नो प्रस्तुति राख्नुहुनेछ र त्यस पछाडि बाँकी करिब 40-45 मिनट चाहिँ हामी खुला छलफल गर्छौँ। खुला छलफलमा चाहिँ यहाँहरूले प्रश्न, जिज्ञासा, टिप्पणीहरू राख्न सक्नुहुनेछ पालै पालो गरेर। म हाम्रो आजको यो कार्यक्रम सुरु गर्नुभन्दा अगाडि चाहिँ हामी एक राउन्ड परिचय गर्छौँ। मबाट सुरु गर्छु। मेरो नाम चाहिँ सञ्जिला मोक्तान, म यहीँ काम गर्छु।
नमस्ते सबैजनालाई। मेरो नाम उत्तम खड्का, म पनि किङ्स कलेजसँग आबद्ध छु। त्यसमा त्यहाँ चाहिँ अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय साझेदारी, इन्टरनेसनल कोलाबोरेसन र पढाउने काम पनि गर्छु।
नमस्ते, म विशाला श्रेष्ठ, सोसल साइन्सको विद्यार्थी, अहिले मार्टिन कलेजमा।
नमस्ते सबैजना, मेरो नाम योकी राई, म हालसालै जर्नलिस्ट। थ्याङ्क यू।
मेरो नाम प्रतिशन्त, म यहीँ काम गर्छु।
म देवेन्द्र प्रति यहीँ काम गर्छु। मेरो नाम सक्षम भण्डारी, म चाहिँ एक्चुअली मिडियाबाट हो। हामी चाहिँ डेभलपमेन्ट इनिसिएटिभ्स र हेल्थ सेक्टरमा चाहिँ रिपोर्ट गर्छु इभेन्ट्सहरू। सो त्यसको लागि
नमस्ते, म चाहिँ अभिलाषा शर्मा, म चाहिँ एज अ रिसर्च कन्सल्टेन्ट काम गर्छु अनि त्यो बाहेक लिङ्ग्विस्टिकहरूमा पनि काम गरिरहेको छु।
म अरुण गुरुङ, विद्यार्थी।
हुन्छ, यहाँहरू सम्पूर्णलाई धन्यवाद। अब भने म स्वेच्छाजी र सुशोभनजीलाई चाहिँ आफ्नो प्रस्तुति अगाडि बढाउनको लागि अनुरोध गर्छु। सुनिन्छ?
हुन्छ, थ्याङ्क यू सञ्जिलाजी। हामी प्रेजेन्टेसन चाहिँ इङ्ग्लिसमा दिन्छौँ, क्वेसन एन्सर्समा चाहिँ इङ्ग्लिस नेपाली दुवै गरेर हुन्छ। Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today, and thank you to Martin Chautari and especially Swechhya Rajbhandary for reaching out to us and giving this platform to share about our work. Before we begin, due to the nature of the topic, we want to start by setting some norms and boundaries for this space that we want to create here today. We understand that the content and discussion of this topic can be triggering or incite strong emotions. If you need to regulate or ground yourself, please don't hesitate to take a breather and take care of yourself. Today we're representing an institute. While we will be honest and share all of our important learnings, we will refrain from breaching confidentiality. We request you to not ask the details of a case, especially because we want to be mindful of those who are affected by the case. We want to acknowledge that there may be survivors, silent victims, and folks who have undergone violence and injustice here in this case. For some, this might be a subject of discussion or debate, but for some, it's a lived reality. So please be mindful of your own positionality. Having said that, because we come from diverse experiences and ideologies, let's treat this space with empathy and curiosity rather than judgment and shaming. Finally, we speak from our own lived experiences, and we're continuously learning and updating ourselves. So we may be imperfect and don't want to claim that we have found any answers, but we are here to share our learnings. We acknowledge that approaches to handling grievances are non-singular. What we say may or may not apply to you, so we invite you to engage in this platform with your own diverse curiosities and learnings. We want to clarify the terminologies that will be used in this talk. We will be using the words victim, survivor, and complainant interchangeably. While using the word victim, we don't want to take away the power and agency of the struggles and experiences that a survivor has gone through. But at the same time, by using survivors, we don't want to reduce the ongoing sufferings of the victims, especially early stage victims. And by using complainants or someone who files a grievance, we don't want to make it detached. Similarly, we'll use accused, perpetrator, and respondent interchangeably. This depends on which part of the grievance handling process we're referring to. If proven guilty, then we use the term perpetrator. From the point of view of the victim, we use accused. And during the process, we use respondents. So before we start, we'd like to start with our own positionality and standpoint. So the work that I do is shaped from my own experience as an educator, feminist, daughter, granddaughter, friend, and sister. Through my education in the US, I got to see the workings of the Title IX Committee. After returning back to Nepal through my Teacher Nepal Fellowship, I taught in the villages of Dang and Kamisha. While being there, the nuances of handling child marriages of my students and facilitating Chautari reflections with the students every day after school, talking about identities, mindset, culture, consent, victim blaming, and gender-based violence gave me inspiration to continue doing what I do. When a harassment case was filed by a girl student, I saw the lack of mechanism in place and rampant victim blaming, but I also saw the fruition of reflection culture. The survivor felt empowered and supported by her classmates. The students from the class could identify victim blaming and take a stand against it. I saw the importance of allies, men allies, and having a strong support system to make victims feel empowered. Such learnings as an educator has shaped my practices and mindset. My experiences could be better articulated with trainings I received from the Gender Equality Studies and training from University of Iceland, the POSH Train the Trainer workshop from One Future Collective in India, and Indigenous Excellence Framework from Teach for All USA for a more intersectional, inclusive, and informed lens.
Hello everyone. I'm Sushobhan Chimoriya. I currently work as the program coordinator at OSRL, Office of Safe and Respectable Learning. And I also work as the DEI lead for the college. We are currently in the process of conducting a DEI audit for the organization. My experiences are with the whole work with the with OSRL and with King's College. Started in 2018. I joined as a student. I graduated in 2022. It was in the final year of my college that I came to know about OSRL. Um, it was in the process of being formed, and we'll talk about how it was formed. But yeah, I joined in as a student member in 2021. After graduating, I joined in as a full-time staff in 2023. So my experience and my professionality is very much shaped by my shift from student to staff working at OSRL, and it's also really shaped by my own coming out journey that was very much facilitated by the space that OSRL was able to create and the space that I was able to create with OSRL. My background is in business and economics, but my work has focused on safety, inclusion, and justice. In the past, I've worked with Swechhya Nepal, an organization working in the field of digital rights, privacy, and safety. I've also worked with Not Anymore campaign, which focused on fighting online sexual harassment and providing psychosocial as well as pro bono legal support for the survivor victims. Related to the work that I do, I also attended a training by the Center for Restoration in Delhi, and the workshop was titled Preventing Harassment in College Campuses, and I learned a lot from there. So my positionality and my work with OSRL is primarily shaped by my own journey as a student, as a staff, and the different professional engagements that I have been very fortunate to have.
So a bit about how OSRL came to be. I joined King's in 2019 to look after an innovation project. In 2020, COVID happened. During the lockdown period, we had to transition to an online mode of teaching. And in that duration, we started receiving complaints of online bullying and harassment between students over Zoom messages, WhatsApp, and other social media platforms. When this matter was brought about in one of our all-hands meetings, Dr. Bhavna Shashta, co-founder of Nine Motions Matter and a full-time faculty at King's College, Kaushal Sapkota, the program director of King's MBA non-profit, and I volunteered to go over the existing policies and mechanisms on anti-harassment. After seeing that there weren't any proper policies and mechanisms in place, we decided to work on it together. That's also when we learned that the three of us had been advocating and championing diversity, equity, and inclusion in our own working spaces in our own ways. So in the next all-hands meeting of full-time staff, we proposed the need to establish a department called Office of Safe and Respectable Learning, where we will work on formulating policies and grievance reporting mechanism. Because it was online and the three of us had volunteered due to our passion and commitment towards the cause, the all-hands meeting came to a consensus and we established a department. To conclude the meeting, we did say that we would need support from everyone, everyone at King's. So the first step is we realized that we needed someone with a legal background, and we reached out to Manusmriti Baral, working in MBA non-profit department with a law background. After a while, we also onboarded Sushant Vijal with a background in social counseling. At this point, we were mapping our own King's community for resource persons. Then Smriti Karanjit, full-time faculty teaching psychology, reached out to us saying she wanted to be part of the OSRL team. We then started the groundwork by floating a survey on campus climate and culture to both students and faculty. The survey was inspired by University of Michigan's Campus Climate Survey on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. This was then followed by a focus group discussion with staff, separate for men and women staff, interested students, experts such as educators and lawyers. Because we're affiliated with Westcliff University in the US and have to follow their policy and guidelines as well, we went through their Title IX policy. It's a policy that prohibits sex-based discrimination in education programs and activities that receive federal financial assistance. We also had a meeting with their Title IX coordinator. We discussed the workings of their department and asked them to give a presentation to our leadership team. At the same time, we were also doing desk work on benchmarking best practices around the world. We could leverage Title IX policies and the department, and while communicating to others, we could say that OSRL is doing work that is similar to Title IX, but contextualized to the Nepali culture. As for our survey and focus group, our major findings were students and staff felt they lacked awareness and understanding of terms like homophobia, harassment, hostility, ableism, discriminatory practices, etc., and said they needed more clarity and context for such terms. Both students and staff said there was a need for a proper grievance handling mechanism, and if there was one, they would want to know how it worked and how confidentiality would be maintained. So we realized that confidentiality was also very important for them. We also found out that the culture normalizes jokes that are thought to be harmless, but embedded in misogyny, body shaming, colorism, homophobia. The survey and focus group discussion showed that more women were affected than men. Both students and staff suggested the need for sensitization sessions along with ongoing conversations and dialogues on these topics. So after most of the groundwork and presenting our findings, we defined OSRL's scope of work in three folds, which would be grievance handling led by Bhavna as first responder to grievances, education and awareness, which I led, and policy and research led by Kaushal. The three folds would support and feed into each other to make our system more robust. For our grievance handling process, Bhavna Shastra was nominated as the grievance advisor and lead with her background in socio-emotional learning and our trust in her with empathetic listening. We documented the initial draft of grievance reporting mechanism from filing a case until closing a case. For example, students and staff would choose different channels of reporting, such as scanning the QR of posters we put in different parts of the college, emailing the advisor, or setting up an in-person meeting with the advisor. We also worked and drafted clear guidelines on the process of maintaining confidentiality and anonymity while writing reports and communicating about a case, and thought through the process of how we could involve other members, the investigation process, recommending solutions, and closing the case. Regarding the challenges specific to the grievance handling process, firstly, we identified the gaps in Sexual Harassment at Workplace Prevention Act of 2014, where it wasn't specific and we felt it didn't cater to higher education institutes. There was also a focus on conciliation, which we discussed open doors for victim getting coerced into conciliation. There's a part that says cause the accused to apologize to the victim, which in most cases puts the pressure on the victim to accept the apology despite not being ready for it. While dealing with grievances, we saw the challenges that come from our biases and mindset. For example, in almost all cases, there is no ideal victim. What does an ideal victim look like for you? We've each formed a perception of what a victim should look like, and when the victim doesn't wear a certain clothing, is under alcohol, is not an overachieving student, is vocal, when incidents are gray and murky, which in most cases it is, what happens? It often leaves space for a lot of victim blaming. regarding a news on national media of a girl getting raped by both her first and second partner, I received a question out of curiosity. They said, why did the girl get raped again by a different boyfriend? First time I get, second time shouldn't she have been more cautious? Then we realized that many people don't know how victims often tend to get re-victimized. We also noticed that in most of the cases, the empathy for the perpetrator comes more naturally of how unarko life begins. And here, the victim, what they went through and what they have to carry for the rest of their life is almost invisible. In all of this, we strongly realize the need for a trauma-informed and a victim-centric approach. And this entire process takes a massive toll, mental and emotional toll on you. It gets personal, it comes in contact with your own past experiences, traumas, biases, and prejudices. So we as OSRL members also have to continually reflect on our own biases and privileges that come from our gender, work, education, class, position, and so forth.
After I joined in as a full-time staff, my role was primarily to document and materialize the process that we already had. All of the majority of the work that that was just presented was already done before I joined in as a full-time staff. So once I joined in as a full-time staff, my role was to document that, materialize that, and also make it more visible. So this was one of the things that we did. Yeah, we had to keep on having discussions about it and making requests for it. But now we also have a dedicated OSRL space at the college where students can drop by and share their concerns or just be there for a conversation. In the same, we do not have separate spaces, but we also have spaces for the room is also shared by the counselor. So anytime we need to have any kind of counseling sessions or psychosocial counseling sessions or even talking about your emotions, this is the space that we use. You can also see that there is this ever-present poster that you could find in different places at the college. You could find it behind the washroom doors. You could find it in front of the changing rooms. That is the door to that office. So you can find the form there. You can also find it in the staff room, in the principal's cabin, in the event coordinator's cabin. So anywhere you might see students hanging around or spending time, you can always access the docs, access the form and file their grievance. This is the handling policy that we have. I've not, for security purposes, I have not put in the entire policy, but if we happen to have a conversation and if we need access to that, maybe we can confirm and share the policy if required. But this is the policy that we have. We prepared this policy and also got it approved by the executive committee, which is a committee that is composed of different leads at the institution, different department leads and different project leads. So we also got it approved. We got some feedbacks and made changes as required. So this is the framework that we have at hand, right? It might not be very visible right now, so I'm going to switch over to another PDF where you can see this much more clearly. Okay, so this is the framework that we have. If it's not visible to you, if the letters are not visible, I'll just, please, I hope you can go by my description. A very important note to start with is that OSRL only deals with grievances that have students in either complainant and or respondent capacity. I'll also explain what those terms mean to us. And anything that has to do with strictly faculty members or staff members is dealt by the people and culture team, the HR equivalent at King's College. So the terminologies that we use in this investigation process, like we mentioned, we might use other teams when the complaint, with other terms when the complaint is received, or when we have resolved the conflict in any way, we might use different terminologies. But during the investigation process, these are the terminologies that we use. Complainant, So the complainant is the party that takes note of the grievances, observes what is happening, and reaches out to OSRL for grievance handling. This could include the person who did face the injustice, faced abuse, harassment, discrimination, and disrespect. Those are the four terminologies that we use, and we'll get to that as well. But anyone who faced any kind of abuse, harassment, discrimination, and disrespect, or it could be someone who took a note of it. It could be their friend, it could be their teacher, or it could be a bystander as well. Respondent. Respondent is the party that is the subject of the grievance investigation. In some cases, an equivalent might be the accused. Advisor. So advisor, like we mentioned, we nominated an advisor at the beginning during the planning process as well. For now, we define advisor because again, because of professional responsibilities, we do not want to mention the name of a specific person, A, for their own safety, because this is a framework that is provided to all students and all staff members at the college. So just for the safety of the person as well, and because the role might change or the professional engagements might change, we only call this role the advisor and not direct it to a specific person. But the advisor is part of the OSRL team, will primarily look through the grievance handling process, the process as identified here. We also have a grievance board, and we don't always have to reach out to the grievance board. Grievance board is only brought in and formed, so we do not have a permanent grievance board. We form a grievance board as required, and the members are also decided based on what the complaint is, or what the reparation we think is required, or if the investigation requires more team members. That's only when we form the grievance board, and there's not a permanent grievance board. The grievance board, if required, is composed of the grievance advisor, as mentioned before, representative from OSRL. So, for example, it could be the two of us. If I could be added as a representative for the OSRL representative, program leads, because we might have to deal with academic reparations as well, academic decisions as well. So program leads. So we currently have three program leads at the college for the MBA program, for the IT program, and the BBA program. The vice principal, who will be the authority to reach out to Westlife University, which is the university that King's is affiliated with, and also provide their own input in the decision-making process. If the grievance has any faculty or staff member involved, the people and culture representative might also get involved, but that's only if there is a faculty or staff in either of the complainant or respondent capacity, and might include the president. The president will not be a part of the board, but we might reach out to the president for maybe cases that need more stricter decisions, but they are not a part of the board. We might reach out to them for advice purposes. So I'll very quickly explain what the process looks like. The first process is obviously taking note of the grievance. This could be done by the person who's facing the abuse, harassment, discrimination, and disrespect, or someone else who takes a note of it. This is followed by the grievance can either be emailed. The preferred mode in which we collect the grievance is through the grievance form as shared in the previous slide. They are accessible on college notice boards, King Support, which is a website that all of the students use. OSRL social media, we also have a dedicated social media where you can access the form, and also on the college website. If filling out the form is not a possibility, the grievance can be directly emailed to our email address, and any informal notice can also be provided to any OSRL team member. That is then acknowledged. This acknowledgement must be sent within 48 hours of receiving the grievance, and this is followed by tracking and providing a code to the grievance so as to ensure anonymity, but also get the process started. So this is the first step, which is grievance identification, which is followed by step 2, investigation. The first step is reaching out to the complainant and talking to them in any way possible for them. It could just be an email, it could be through a voice call, it could be through an online call, or it could be based on meeting the complainant. And if the complainant is different from the student who has been a victim, who has been victimized by abuse, harassment, discrimination, disrespect, we might reach out to that person. Then we reach out to the respondent, who is the person who is the subject of the investigation, and we might also reach out to any evidences or witnesses. We might assess the evidence, and we might also talk to the witnesses in whatever form it's possible. This is followed by the third step, which is the reporting. So the reporting process is where we do the investigation. We might have conversations, or if it's only being led by the advisor, and if a grievance board is not required, we might it might include the work that the advisor does. This is followed by making a report, and depending on the sensitivity of a case, a report might be submitted. It's not essential to submit the report, but if there are a lot of decisions to be made and a lot of factors to be considered, the factors that could include the reputation of the college, but also maybe some academic decision that might have to be made about the student or a teacher or a course. So if depending on the sensitivity, a report might be submitted. This is followed by the reparations, which is the action stage. The detailed report of the case is prepared. Recommendation is provided. OSRL is not the decision-taking body. The recommendation is usually provided to the person who's concerned with making the decision or has the authority to do so. We might, in cases that do not have a lot of action to take, maybe OSRL becomes the decision-making body, but usually we are the ones who provide the recommendations, and these recommendations could include anything from maybe talking to the in-house counselor, or maybe talking to a representative from My Emotions Matter about maybe something that we did recently was having a respondent attend a session, attend a counseling session on non-violent communication. It could also include suspension, apology, acknowledgement, rustication, whatever is required. This after this separation is made, we look at if the recommendation provided has been implemented or not. And once that is done, we then reach out to the complainant, and a simple question that we ask is, do you feel justly treated? Do you feel like the decision respected your respected how you wanted to be treated and how you wanted this case to be treated? And that is because we follow a victim-centric model of grievance handling. So let me just share about that. Yeah, this is a very, I just explained the entire process to you. We'd love to tell you that this is how it always goes. There's a very clear demarcation. There is no influence of any kind. We're always able to meet the deadlines. We're always able to keep everybody in these placeholders, but it usually looks like this. So as I mentioned, victim-centric. So we follow a victim-centric method of grievance handling as opposed to system-centric. So a victim-centric approach is one that there are three things that we really value during the grievance handling process. Those are agency of the victim. We are using the term victim right now because this does not concern investigation. This concerns like pre-investigation or just even before it might be reported to OSRL. So we place importance on the agency. That means that it should be up to the complainant to make a decision to either file any grievance to the OSRL or not. It also includes dignity. Because at any point in the investigation process, the dignity of the victim should not be compromised. And empowerment. This means that this could include the victim being aware of everything that's happening during the investigation. This could include the victim having the power to decide what kind of action the victim wants to take. And this also includes them being aware of the decisions that the organization is planning to take or the recommendation that OSRL has offered. So agency, dignity, and empowerment are of crucial importance to victim-centric methodology, which is what we follow. If I had to summarize it very quickly, do no harm, do no further harm to the victim. Safety of the victim is always always of importance. There should be confidentiality maintained, and anything that is to be shared outside the advisor and the complainant is to be done with the informed consent of the complainant. asking and listening, because we are not offering the solution, we're asking how you would want to be treated. Assistance and support is always to be provided. Timely information, what is happening, and what is happening with their courses, or what is happening with the investigation, or what is happening with the implementation of the recommendation. All of those, the complainant is privy to that information timely. Non-discrimination, this includes, because someone chose to be a part of the investigative process does not mean they should be discriminated against by the advisor, by the grievance board, or by the larger college community. And learning and continuous improvement, like we mentioned previously, that's of very much importance to a victim-centric approach. Some questions that we have or we regularly get when we talk about victim-centric method of grievance handling. How do we look at increase in number of grievances? Is it a good thing? And also we also have to think of the institution that has hired us, that is paying us to do this job, right? So how do we look if there's a massive number in increase in number of grievances? Is that a good thing? Are people feeling comfortable to talk to us? Which we think that it's a good thing that more people are comfortable with sharing their grievances. But how does that reflect on the culture of the institution? Does that also mean that the practice of abuse, harassment, discrimination, and disrespect is probably increasing? This is a conflict that we have. We also, a lot of people also vouch for zero tolerance policy when it comes to grievance handling. But as you might have deduced from my explanation of victim-centric framework, they don't always align. And there are things that are actually very different from the way zero tolerance policy might be applied. So how do we make sense of, because we're not saying that zero tolerance policy is wrong or victim-centric policy is the only way to go, but can they coexist? Can they? And these are not things that we have an answer to, but these are the things that we constantly ponder upon. We also think about what it means to have a victim-centric approach that differs from the retributive justice. Retributive justice punishes people. Prison could be involved, or some academic retribution could also be involved. But does that usually align with victim-centric approach? Because that might re-victimize or re-traumatize the victim in any way, the implementation of the recommendation that we make. And we also want to focus more on healing and not just justice alone. So how do we look at that? So these are the questions that we have that we are still learning about and don't have a perfect answer to. Okay. So the second fold that we focus on, education and awareness. There are, I like to divide it into 4 parts: curriculum and learning modules. So we have been running modules since 2021. It started out for the MBA students, but now we have done it for BSCers, BSIT, BBA students, and we've done almost 20 to 25 modules now. The name has changed a lot. We initially called it embracing
Inclusion, championing justice.
yeah. So and then now it's called Pahichan. But then we're also running full-time courses now called Language, Power and Culture, where we implement a lot of the things that we talk about now. We also offer external modules. We've done a session on developing these kind of grievance handling policies for other NGOs or governmental organizations. We've also developed resources and tools. We also initially 2020 formed a tool called the Social Justice Glossary that borrowing from different similar glossaries, but also like contextualizing that. We also, informal conversation is something that becomes a part of what we do and our job as well, because a lot of the times people are much more comfortable asking the kind of important but maybe difficult questions to ask informally. They could be in group settings, they could be while having lunch in the canteen, it could also be during one-on-one conversations, or I think that's when a lot of the learning and clearing out the doubts happen, and we can't discard that, because those are the ways in which someone's mindset really changes. And also visibility and engagement. We focus on external sessions but also internal sessions. We offer professional development modules for the staff related to grievance handling process or empathetic grievance handling, for example. We also provide, based on our learnings, something that we started in 2021 was running a monthly advocacy series. It was first we started out by the cases that we saw around us. We anonymize them and use them as learning opportunities for the staff to learn about the grievance handling process and how they could actively be a part of it. This was followed by a plethora of different topics that we tackled. We talked about mental health in one of the sessions. We also talked about rape culture. We talked about things like, we talked about queer experiences in educational institutions and a lot more different kinds. Like I think as we expanded, we tried to include more and more intersectional perspectives to make the conversation and the series really engaging. So there's a lot of education, like space facilitation, workshops, sessions, a lot of that we do to build our own information, build our skill to, while sharing these things, build our conversational skills, but also maybe provide a learning opportunity for the staff and students at the college, but also beyond.
Regarding our ongoing challenges, being a management college, it was difficult finding our own space and setting our footing. We always thought it would be easier to explain certain concepts if we were a humanities college. And also how OSRL was perceived was also challenging. We kind of became like a policing body and OSRL lagaidins who became a running joke. Through that, we were carving our own space, but obviously not in the most favorable circumstance. So as our effort, we decided to focus on trust building and community building. Most importantly, we had to repeatedly reassure that we are not against the institute, that we care for the students and for the institute. That's why we want to make it better. Eventually, with our actions, the management, people in leadership saw that we meant well, especially for the students and the institute. Also, how people viewed OSRL through different members also varied. Some were more vocal, some called out, some listened to all perspectives. So without intending to, the contrasting approaches of different OSRL members became important in navigating people and culture. There was and still is fear of what can be said or unsaid in a politically correct manner. We noticed people individually coming to us, like Sushobhan mentioned, in informal spaces or in a non-facilitated setting to fearfully ask questions. While we want people to take agency to self-learn, we also offer a non-judgmental space for people to come and reflect with us. We also put effort in community building. To find our allies, we rolled out a form for faculty and staff to join our community as active member, support team member, or a community member, depending on how much time they could commit. We were pleasantly surprised when we saw that there were staff who we didn't realize supported us. In this process, men allies, student allies, allies in leadership played an instrumental role in setting a culture and accelerating our work. The external validation we received from experts, well-wishers, organizations also added credibility to our work in the institute.
So I think I'll just take a minute or two to talk about King's Pride Alliance. So for me, when I was a student, I think it was in 2021 that I reached out to one of the members at OSRL. I dropped an anonymous email and then talking about my own identity with queerness, and there was an event related to queerness that was organized at the college, and I had some thoughts and feedbacks, and I shared them anonymously. I was not out at the college, but then that led into me having a very long conversation, like a 72 email chain that I look at with a lot of gratitude, but also a lot of, as folks say, it cringe. But and that developed into me joining OSRL and that also developed into us forming at the end of 2021, and it really being active in 2022. And we formed an initiative called the King's Pride Alliance. So, in a lot of institutions outside Nepal, primarily in the US, Canada, and Europe, Australia, there are clubs called queer straight alliances or gay straight alliances that have been in existence since the 80s. The purpose of those clubs is to provide a safe space for the queer students as well as faculty members at the college, but it's not a queer only club, because it's also for allies and advocates who want to support the community, want to learn more about the community. So there are a lot of people who reached out to us through modules. A lot of the student engagement that has been possible at OSRL and through OSRL has also come from modules, come from the education and awareness sessions that we provide. So those are of very, very vital importance to us, and that also includes support from outside the college. We've had a lot of college students who do not study at King's, maybe study at other institutions, shared that they needed this kind of space and have found that space weirdly in a different institution, right? So we formed King's Pride Alliance in 2021. We had some folks who joined from the modules. We also had folks who actually came out because of, so there's a module that talks about things like, talks about gender, talks about patriarchy, talks about sexuality, support safe space, and that so there were people who joined like that. We also rolled out an open forum, and then we had a very visible community of students in 2022, from those who were studying in the fourth year like myself, but then those who were in the second year, first year, third year. So we also have had students from outside King's who followed us on social media, filled up the form. We mentioned to them that we will be doing things inside the college. We'll be meeting at the college. We'll be doing things that work for King's student. Are you still willing to apply, willing to engage with us? And there are a lot of people who were. We had some folks who did fill up the application, but did not feel comfortable joining something that has pride in the title very visibly, and we completely understand that. I think the first session that we had, once we had the members, we very clearly talked about how this means that you are going to be visible. This means that you might hear things that are not very favorable, things that are not very supportive, and I think and that's how we built the community. We did a lot of events, we would have meetings. In that way, we also became friends, right? We still have King's Pride Alliance. Almost all of the initial members have graduated, but now we have students in their first year joining, and we currently have a group of 9 students who are member of the alliance through King's Pride Alliance and through OSRL. We've done a lot of events. We have attended Pride parades together. That's from the most recent orientation. We've also done a lot of events trying to form our own community, trying to engage folks from CSOs, from NGOs, those who are college students, to talk about education in context of intersectionality, inclusion, diversity, accessibility. So the image in the middle is of a research colloquium that we did back in 2024 with the topic Safe Spaces in Education Institutions. So while so in a way we wanted to build a culture that way. That's from, we've also supported and were partners for Heart to Heart 2023, which was the fundraising event for the Pride Parade of that year. We also hold events for folks outside the King's community. This is a program called Chautari, where we just talked about our childhood because it was Children's Day. So we try to do a lot of community building as well as just in a way knowledge building resources as well, with the aim to form our own network. These are also the networks through which we have received a lot of love, support, but also opportunities, financial opportunities, learning opportunities, and a lot of visibility.
अब टाइम चाहिँ अफ भइसक्यो हजुर
I think maybe 5
5 मिनटमा
I think as a team, what worked and what were for us is that as a team we were people who were already involved full time in other roles. So while starting out, gaining trust, setting our foot, the college did not have to bear financial burden, which initially helped in reducing the barriers for us to work. I think widening our vocabulary and not just focusing on harassment or sexual harassment worked well. It was easier for us to communicate the need for a safe, inclusive, and respectable space at an educational institute. It was something people could understand and felt the need for. That also allowed us more space to work on issues of harassment, discrimination, bullying, and so forth. Having policies while handling grievances became very helpful. We could refer to the policy and put it in the agreements while explaining and justifying to respondents. King's is an entrepreneurial college, so it encourages innovation and having an entrepreneurial mindset. So OSRL became an entrepreneurial initiative of staff who saw a problem and decided to do something about it. And we are grateful to the autonomy that we got to do our own things. The transformations that we saw was mainly institutionalizing OSRL. We made the 6-week OSRL module mandatory for students. We started working closely with the HR and governance department to form policies, code of conduct for staff. We, while revising the goals, we added diversity and inclusion as one of the goals, goal number 8 of the entire college. College started hiring, allocating funds, and investing in DEI initiatives. We also saw a shift in the nature and intensity of the cases as well. The intensity of the cases and the number of cases slowly started increasing, which we believe is a sign of a working mechanism. We saw a shift in culture. So when we asked our president the change he saw after OSRL, he said he changed, his perspective changed over time. He felt that the more aware he got over time, he and the college felt more responsibility to work towards it, which we can vouch for in how it started with him saying no to panels with men, and how over time he started reaching out to us while seeking support and perspective on a certain topic, or showing solidarity with OSRL within and beyond the institute. Similarly, we have noticed people now are more mindful of saying offensive and hurtful things disguised as jokes, where they will think twice before saying it, or even if they do, will immediately try to reframe it. Today, the management feels like our team, who are actively seeking to make college inclusive. The biggest transformation we saw was when King's Pride Alliance was set up. We saw friendships and a strong knit community forming. We saw the students finding a safe, pocketed space where they could be authentically themselves and felt supported. Witnessing drastic social growth in students has to be one of my biggest joy and pride. It's a place where I also felt safe and safe to reflect on my own identity fully.
So, yeah, I think in summary, we talked about the culture, we talked about how education became a part of it, how informal conversations became a part of the entire process, how research, I think we forgot to emphasize, we also, Swechhya also prepared a research report that you can find and that we can share with you regarding this experience of forming a grievance handling community at a higher education institution. So for us, creating this culture and having this all of the elements, joy, friendship, and everything reminds us that grievance handling cannot exist in silos. We have to give in as someone who's working in the field of grievance handling, we have to give in more than just following a procedure and having and just investigating through that, providing recommendations through that, because it takes our own biases, our own identities, our own experiences, and for those to exist, grievance handling cannot exist in silos, and we need to be aware of the environment and the culture that we have at hand. We also realize that we need more psychosocial and legal support for those who come to us for grievance handling, especially those who have a very GBV informed lens or trauma informed lens and a feminist lens, which we feel like is lacking. We also need a more diverse grievance board because right now, in order to maintain confidentiality, it's primarily composed of the full-time staff at the college, but also they are full-time. So conversations, there's a lot more time to have those conversations. There's a lot more avenue to talk about things, right? So we also need a more diverse grievance board for their own experiences, but also to ensure more confidentiality, more support for those who come to us for regarding their grievances. And finally, as you all might guess, this is a very emotionally, physically, mentally taxing work. So while doing this challenging work, we really have to think about and consider what safety looks like for us. For us, the grievance handlers in our own body, we have to have our own community that we can maybe vent without providing the details about the case, right? We also need to share how we feel. We also need support, psychosocial support, legal support, but also support with the work that we do. Sometimes, because we are so focused on grievance handling and we have other responsibilities, we might not be able to do that. In our experience, it's our colleagues who have taken up the load and helped us with that. And we really appreciate having that safety as well. And just, I think the purpose of this entire process and the work that we do is to create a community that is more inclusive, empathetic, and listens to everyone. And thank you so much for listening. You can find us on social media. You can also, we also have our website link there, and you can also reach out to OSRL social media, but email address, but also our personal email addresses. And we'd love to hear your thoughts and learning from all the experiences and learning that you've done. Thank you so much.
धन्यवाद स्वेच्छाजी र सुशोभनजीलाई प्रस्तुतिको लागि। अब चाहिँ खुला छलफलको समय भएको छ। यहाँहरूले पालैपालो हात उठाएर आफ्नो प्रश्न, जिज्ञासा, टिप्पणी जे छ त्यो राख्न सक्नुहुन्छ। त्यस्तै
दुवैजनालाई प्रस्तुतिको लागि धन्यवाद। मोस्ट अफ इट वाज भेरी क्लियर। तर दुवैजनाले मोडुल भन्ने शब्द धेरै युज गर्नुभयो। But you didn't really tell us about how it's implemented. So you have modules of various length, but I know what a module is, but how is it being implemented in the college in its different programs with respect to students or faculty members? अनि स्वच्छाले बोल्ने क्रममा चाहिँ OSRL लगाइदिन्छु भन्ने सेन्टेन्स युज गर्नु भएपछि you made a couple of sentences that didn't make clear, that didn't make sense to me. Maybe you spoke too quickly or I didn't listen properly. त्यसमा चाहिँ के भन्नुभएको थियो भने सुरुमा OSRL अफिस सुरु भएपछि चाहिँ if I got you correctly, top leadership of the college, they only शङ्काले हेर्यो अथवा or didn't really have the confidence कि के भन्ने खालको एउटा सेन्टेन्स परेको थियो. So maybe you can clarify that. I was a little confused in the sense that college ले OSRL office स्थापना गर्ने डिसिजन गरिसकेपछि त्यस्तो किसिमको lack of confidence on the office itself त हुन नपर्ने हो. So did I hear you correctly or yeah?
I think I can start with the module, right? So हाम्रो अहिले King's College मा चाहिँ we have modules that students have to take. So it's a professional modules भन्छ, which is outside of the academic courses they take. So to build their professional growth नै भन्नु, for the professional growth, different खालको modules चाहिँ introduce गरिरहेको हुन्छ. अनि to graduate they have to complete certain modules and your module ko duration say it's from 6 to 8 weeks. So per week say 2 hours ko class jasto huncha. Ani यसको लागि चाहिँ हामीले OSRL through modules introduce गर्यो. The module ko topics are embracing identities, championing justice. So we include your OSRL grievance handling mechanism, identities को बारे, inclusion, what does inclusion and safe space look like भन्ने त्यो discussion देखि लिएर त्यो awareness sessions को लागि we run this module. It's a 6-week module with 2 hours per week. As for your OSRL लगाइदिन्छु भन्ने वाला कुरा, obviously त्यो in theory I think grievance policy बनाउन पनि it's easy, and like easy भन्दा पनि we can draft a policy होला, we can establish a department होला, तर त्यो how does the implementation को part look like, त्यो especially implementation को part मा चाहिँ there's a lot of like obviously सबैजनाले हामी आफै पनि मैले पनि हुन्छ we are carrying our biases, prejudices बोकिरहेको हुन्छौँ, so त्यो सेन्समा चाहिँ OSRL भनेपछि अलिकति स्पेशली स्टाफहरू बिच कुराकानीमा चाहिँ स्टाफहरूको लागि चाहिँ it became like a policing body where we will take action against what they say, maybe the jokes that they make होला, अनि so यो more leadership भन्दाखेरि पनि internally as a staff चाहिँ त्यो more running joke जस्तो चलिरहेको थियो, and that is also something that we had to like mindset change गर्नको लागि, culture change गर्नको लागि चाहिँ त्यो establish त भयो department, तर culture change गर्नको लागि चाहिँ we also realized that staffहरू अनि स्टुडेन्ट्सहरूलाई त मोड्युल भयो, स्टाफहरूको लागि चाहिँ advocacy series भनेर चाहिँ हामीले monthly एउटा discussion जस्तो discussion on harassment भने के हो त, nature different nature of harassment के हो, queer students को लागि safety भनेको के हो, LGBTQI भनेकै के हो, gender and sexuality को त्यो different conversationsहरू चाहिँ हामी monthly we started doing, यो चाहिँ again to change the culture within the institute.
अरू प्रश्न
यो मोड्युल्सकै फलोअप हो होइन, यो जुन फ्याकल्टीलाई पनि विशेष मोड्युल्सहरू बनाउनु भएको थियो नि, अब त्यो कम्पल्सरी बनाउनु भयो भएन, कसरी लागु गर्न सक्नुभयो? जस्तै तपाईँले अलिकति अब्स्टिकल्सको बारेमा चाहिँ अलिकति विस्तृत हिसाबले भनिदिनु भएको हुन्थ्यो। फर इक्जाम्पल विनो टियुहरूमा केहीमा पनि केही पोलिसिजहरू त राख्न कोसिस गरिरहेको छ होइन, रोक्ने व्यक्तिहरू त त्यही सिनियर लिडरसिपै हुन्छ होइन, सो सिनियर लिडरसिपलाई झन् कल्चर परिवर्तन गर्नु कति गाह्रो हुन्छ होइन, सो तपाईँहरूले अलिकति एक्सप्लिसिटली भनिदिनु भएको भने चाहिँ what do you do, how do you make it compulsory, उहाँहरूलाई कसरी चाहिँ चेन्ज गर्नु, बुढाबुढीहरूलाई भनौँ न, उहाँहरूको कल्चर कसरी चेन्ज गर्ने भने त ठुलो समस्या नै हो नि त।
सो यो स्टाफहरूलाई गराउने मोड्युल भनेको चाहिँ पहिला एडभोकेसी सिरिजकै भन्दाखेरि एडभोकेसी सिरिज चाहिँ इट वाज म्यान्डेटेड, त्यो मन्थली एकचोटि चाहिँ त्यो एडभोकेसी सिरिज हुनै त्यो अटेन्ड गर्नु नै पर्छ एन्टायर स्टाफ। सो कस्तो हुन्थ्यो भने किङ्सको त्यो वर्क टाइम भनेको 7 AM to 3 PM हो, अनि भेरी डेलिबरेटली आफ्टर द लन्च 1 PM to 3 PM या 1:30 PM to 3 PM such that ठ्याक्कै एन्ड अफ द वर्क डेमा हुन्छ, any more important parts of their work they can complete it before lunch. So usually lunch चाहिँ 11:30 to 1 जस्तोमा भइरहन्छ किङ्समा, सो लन्च अगाडि काम सकाएर लन्च पछिको टाइमलाई भनेर चाहिँ ओके अब चाहिँ यो म्यान्डेटरी एडभोकेसी सिरिज भनेर गराएको नि। द थिङ द्याट लाइक फ्यु थिङ्स रियली हेल्प अस, एन्ड वान इज पिएनसीबाट पनि सपोर्ट चाहिँ भएको थियो। कसो भने पिएनसीले नै म्यान्डेट, पिएनसी विच इज द एचआर इक्विभ्यालेन्ट एट किङ्स कलेज पिपल एन्ड कल्चर, पिपल एन्ड कल्चरले नै सबैजना स्टाफले त्यो गर्नै पर्छ भनेर इमेल पनि गर्नुभयो, बट अल्सो भेटेर गर्दा पनि आज चाहिँ है आज सेसन आफ्टर 1 याद होला नि भनेर गऱ्यो, अनि त्यो सेसन स्टार्ट भइसकेपछि पनि वाट्सएप ग्रुपमा रिमाइन्ड गर्यो होइन। सो त्यस्तो अलिकति मोर इन्फर्मल रूपमा चाहिँ भइरहेको होइन। सो एडभोकेसी सिरिज इज द्याट, अनि अहिले जुन मोडल भनेको त्यो भयो। वी अल्सो अफर प्रोफेसनल डेभलपमेन्ट मोडल। सो जुन यस्तो कन्भर्जेसन्सहरू एडभोकेसी सिरिजको चाहिँ कुनै पर्टिकुलर स्किल बढाउने या कुनै कन्भर्जेसन गराउने बारे हुन्छ होइन। जसरी हाउ डु वी टक अप लाइक मैले नै वान अफ द फर्स्ट सेसन्स द्याट आई एभर फेसिलिटेटेड, अहिले आई कल माइसेल्फ एन एजुकेटर, बट वान अफ द फर्स्ट थिङ्स द्याट आई डिड अ सेसन on was what LGBTQIA को different त्यो letters mean for the staff at King's College, अनि त्यो बेला almost staffहरूको 100% attendance नै थियो because that was mandated by the PNC, but also they wanted to see एउटा स्टुडेन्टले पढाएर चाहिँ के पढाउँदो रहेछ हेरौँ न त भनेर पनि धेरैजना आउनु भएको थियो होइन। सो अ गुड थिङ अबाउट किङ्स इज त्यस्तो खालको इभेन्ट भइरहेको हुन्छ। यु माइट हेभ अल्सो हर्ड कि किङ्समा बाहिरको इभेन्ट पनि धेरै भइरहेको हुन्छ, अनि त्यसरी नै त्यो डेभलपमेन्टको लागि चाहिँ इभेन्टहरू धेरै भइरहेको हुन्छ। नाउ वी कम टु प्रोफेसनल डेभलपमेन्ट। प्रोफेसनल डेभलपमेन्टको चाहिँ होइन प्रोफेसनल डेभलपमेन्ट मोड्युल्सहरू चाहिँ प्रोभाइड गरिरहेको हुन्छ क्वार्टरली एउटा गर्ने चाहिँ इज द प्लान अफ पिपल एन्ड कल्चर। अनि अहिलेको लागि चाहिँ हाम्रो लागि चाहिँ एभ्री इयर एउटा प्रोफेसनल मोड्युल भनेर 2025 चाहिँ त्यसरी डिसाइड गरेका छौँ। तर 23 मा वी डिड 2 प्रोफेसनल डेभलपमेन्ट मोड्युल्स हैन। प्रोफेसनल डेभलपमेन्ट मोड्युलमा चाहिँ हामीले जुन यो कुरा भयो नि ग्रीभेन्स ह्यान्डलिङलाई एउटा हामीले गरेको प्रोफेसनल मोड्युलमा कस्तो भने इफ इट डज नट स्पीक टु देम स्टाफहरू आउनु रुचाउनु हुन्न। सो लट अफ इट इज यस म्यान्डेट पनि गरे हो तर कति कुरामा चाहिँ आफ्नै पर्सनल रिलेसनसिप लेभरेज गरेर पनि आउनु सेसनमा भनेर भनिरहेको थियौँ हैन। त्यो सँगसँगै त्यो सेसन उहाँहरूको लागि कसरी चाहिँ हामीले कन्टेक्चुअलाइज गर्न सक्छौँ। सो जुन यो ग्रीभेन्स ह्यान्डलिङ मेकानिजम भयो त्यसले हामीले इन अ वे फिडब्याकसँग पनि गरेर रिलेट गराएको थियौँ कि सो तपाईँले पढाइरहनु हुने स्टुडेन्टहरूले तपाईँलाई कुनै ग्रीभेन्स एन्ड नट जस्ट त्यो ग्रीभेन्स इट कुड अल्सो इन्क्लुड एकाडेमिक ग्रीभेन्स के। सो आई थिङ्क ठ्याक्कै हामीले अघि भनेको जस्तै एक्सपान्ड गरेर फाइदा भयो। त्यसैले स्टाफलाई मोडल गर्दा झनै अझ एक्सपान्ड गरेर बट without diverting from what it is really about. Academic grievances को नि कुरा गर तर academic grievances मा पनि victim centrism को कुरा गर्ने। तपाईले कोही स्टुडेन्टले तपाईलाई कुरा गर्न आएको छ यसमा एजेन्सी कसरी प्रोवाइड गर्नु भएको छ स्टुडेन्टलाई इम्पावर गर्नु भएको छ कि छैन। इफ द स्टुडेन्ट इज नट इम्पावर्ड त्यसपछि त स्टुडेन्टलाई तपाईको क्लाससँग पनि मन भरेर आउँछ होला भनेर उहाँहरूलाई एक्चुअल थिङ्स द्याट दे युज actual skills that they might want त्योसँग रिलेट गर्दै गएर चाहिँ सो जस्ट समराइजिङ mandated by the people and culture team a culture of already running those workshops every month जस्तो नै त्यो ठ्याक्कै एन्ड अफ वर्क डे त्यो पनि युजुअली अ थर्सडे अर अ फ्राइडे व्हेन त्यो विक सकिन लागेको हुन्छ हैन। ठ्याक्कै जुन त्यो इमिडिएट कामहरु अलिकति त्यति हुँदैन नि हैन त्यो बेला गर्ने रिमाइन्डर्सहरु पठाउने भेट्दाखेरि कुरा गर्ने आफ्नै नेटवर्कबाट पिएनसीले पनि हामीहरुले पनि आउनु भयो भनेर रिमाइन्ड गर्ने प्लस उहाँहरुलाई युटिलाइज कसरी हुन्छ भन्दै गरेपछि इट बिकेम अ लट मोर इजियर टु गेट देम टु अटेन्ड दोज काइन्ड अफ सेसन्स। बट स्टिल देयर वर पीपल हु डिडन्ट अटेन्ड, देयर वर पीपल हु वुड रेजिस्ट सेसनमै आएर पनि और फ्ल्याट आउट डिसएग्री त्योहरु भइरहेको थियो। बट द्याट्स एक्चुअली बेटर बिकज द्याट प्रोवाइड्स अ स्पेस फर कन्भर्सेसन नि त। अनि त्यही कुराहरु कतिपयचोटि चाहिँ इन्फर्मल कन्भर्सेसन्स आउटसाइड द मोड्युलको इन्भाइरोमेन्ट पनि एक्सटेन्ड हुन्थ्यो which was what we wanted. It was unmeaningful.
सबैले भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ अब यो मेकानिजम स्टाब्लिस भएपछि ग्रिभेन्सेस आउने क्रम चाहिँ बढिरहेछ हैन। त्यसको एउटा पोजिटिभ भनेको चाहिँ यसले केही काम गरिरहेछ भन्ने पनि भन्नुभयो। हजुर त्यो एक किसिमले हो पनि किनभने मान्छेहरू ओपनली अब त्यो केसहरू लिएर आउँछन्। अब यो चाहिँ कस्तो छ ट्रेन्ड अनि यो कति भयो ठ्याक्क मैले त्यो डेट सुरु गरेँ एउटा लेभलसम्म माथि पुगेर झर्नुपर्ने हो हैन। अब यस्तो खालको मेकानिजम सेट भएपछि एकतिर मेकानिजम पनि छ अर्कोतिर अब एडभोकेसी प्लस अवेरनेस पनि छ किनभने यसको अर्को उद्देश्य त कन्ट्रोल गर्ने पनि हो ह्यारेसमेन्टको। हजुर त्यो ग्राफ चाहिँ कसरी गइरहेछ भनेर मलाई त्यो ग्रिभेन्सेसको त्यो जान्नु मन लागेको थियो एउटा हैन। किनभने अब ग्राफ चढाइ गऱ्यो भने त्यो फेलियर भनेर बुझ्नु पऱ्यो नि त। अनि अर्को चाहिँ यो मानौँ अब त्यो कलेजकोबाट बाहिर गएको कुनै केस अब पुलिस प्रशासनका पुग्यो होइन विशेष केसहरू भने त्यो अवस्थामा चाहिँ पुलिस प्रशासनले चाहिँ अब यहाँहरूले अथवा यो मेकानिजमले दिएको रिपोर्ट रिकमेन्डेसनलाई कसरी लिन्छ त्यसको लेगल ग्राउन्ड कस्तो हुन्छ त्यो कोलाबोरेसनको कुरा आउँछ आउँदैन भने कसरी भइरहेछ यदि पहिला केसहरू छ भने। अनि अपिलको मेकानिजम के हुन्छ अब एउटा डिसिसन गरिसकेपछि रिपोर्ट आइसकेपछि पर्पिट्रेटरले अथवा भिक्टिमले अपिल गर्ने जस्तो के छ त्यो
यो आई थिङ्क कुनबाट आन्सर गर्नु लिगल पार्टको आन्सर गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ फर्स्टमा कुनै पनि केस आइसकेपछि हामीले असेस द केस हामी यो केस हेर्छौँ कि हेर्दैनौँ भनेर। फर इक्जाम्पल क्रिमिनल अफेन्स हो भने चाहिँ प्रायः जस्तो हाम्रो डिपार्टमेन्टले हेर्दैन होइन। क्रिमिनल अफेन्स हो भने चाहिँ वी सजेस्ट लिगल एक्सन्स लियो। लिगल एक्सन्सहरू लिनको लागि डु यु निड सपोर्ट भनेर हामी त्यो सोच्छौँ हामी सर्टेन इन्फर्मेसनहरू चाहिँ प्रोभाइड गर्छौँ तर अगेन लिभिङ अप टु द कम्प्लेनेन्ट टु टेक इट फरवर्ड अर नट टेक इट फरवर्ड भनेर अहिलेसम्म यो लिगल गएको पार्ट चाहिँ हामीले फेस गर्नु परेको छैन तर यदि के गरेर के भन्छ हामीले भनि चाहिँ रहेको हुन्छ कुनै पनि केस तिमीहरूले लिगली लग्न मन छ भने it is their choice. They have the rights to do that भनेर अनि स्पेसली फेस गर्नु परेको छैन तर आई नो इन्डियामा चाहिँ जस्तो पस्टको पोलिसिजहरूमा पस्टकै कमिटीले चाहिँ डकुमेन्टेसन्सहरू प्रोभाइड गर्छ होइन इफ इट गोज टु से अनदर बडी सो त्यस्तो बेला चाहिँ हामी वी मेक स्योर द्याट वी डकुमेन्ट द केस फ्रम इनिसियल टु एन्डमा चाहिँ सो डकुमेन्टेसन चाहिँ सकेसम्म वी ट्राई टु मेक इट स्ट्रङ जस्ट इन केस इफ वी हेभ टु डिल समथिङ लाइक द्याट इन द फ्युचर भने तर अहिलेसम्म चाहिँ डिल गर्नु परेको छैन ग्रिभेन्सेसको ट्रेन्ड चाहिँ आई थिङ्क हामीले पनि अब फेरि हेर्नु चाहिँ पर्ने छ आई थिङ्क तपाईँले राइटली पोइन्ट आउट पनि गर्यो यो फेरि यो जुन सुशोभनले डिआइएको अडिट गरिरहेको छ त्यसमा पनि हाम्रो आई थिङ्क यो फ्युचर स्टेप चाहिँ लिन चाहन्छौँ तर फ्रम आवर एक्सपिरियन्स यो ठ्याक्क अहिले डक्टर भावना शास्त्र चाहिँ सी इज इन चाइना टु डु हर पोस्ट डक उहाँले पहिला ग्रिभेन्सेस हेर्नुहुन्छ अहिले म हेर्छु ठ्याक्क उहाँसँग पनि अस्ति कुरा गरिरहेको छु यसैको बेला अनि वी वर रिफ्लेक्टिङ द्याट पहिला चाहिँ एउटा सर्टेन नेचरको ग्रिभेन्सेस आउँथ्यो ग्रिभेन्सेस विच वी हेभ टु डिल विथ जस्तो आइडेन्टिटी रिलेटेड स्टुडेन्ट्सहरूको सर्टेन जेन्डरले गर्दाखेरि कुन वेमा स्पेस कसरी हाउ आर दे फिलिङ जस्तो क्वेयरनेसको कुरा होइन जस्तो बिङ अ क्वेयर स्टुडेन्ट के कुराहरू चाहिँ भोगिरहेको छ भन्ने त्यस्तो खालको ग्रिभेन्सेसहरू आइरहेको छ भने अहिले स्पेसली अ इयर अर टू भयो अलिक स्ट्रङ्गर केसेसहरू चाहिँ आइरहेको छ सो त्यो अघि भने जस्तो त्यो इन्टेन्सिटी चाहिँ चेन्ज भएको छ नम्बर भन्दा पनि आई थिङ्क पहिला अलिक सानो सानोवाला माइनर केसेसहरू आउँथ्यो भने अहिले हल्का त्यो बोर्डलाई नै रिच आउट गर्नुपर्नेवाला केसेसहरू आउँछ सो त्यो केस पनि सानो सानो केसेसहरू हो कन्फ्लिक्ट बिट्विन टु पिपल्स छ स्पेसली स्टुडेन्ट्सहरूको बिच कति त्यो कन्फ्लिक्ट भइरहेको हुन्छ सो त्यस्तो बेला चाहिँ नर्मली ग्रिभेन्स एडभाइजरले नै डिल गरेर क्लोज गरिदिन्छ केस तर अलिकति अझै स्ट्रिक्ट एक्सन्सहरू लिनु पर्यो होइन डिसिप्लिनरी एक्सन्सहरू लिनु पर्यो अथवा एकाडेमिक्सको केही त्यही प्रिपरेसन्सहरूको कुराहरू गरिरहेको थियो सो त्यस्तो डिसिजनमा चाहिँ हाम्रो त्यो इन्भेस्टिगेसन कमिटी अथवा इन्डिपेन्डेन्ट कमिटी नै फर्म हुन्छ जुन सो त्यस्तो केसेसहरू पनि अहिले इन्क्रिज चाहिँ भइरहेको छ सो नम्बर अफ केसेस भन्दा इन्टेन्सिटी वाइज चाहिँ अहिले बढिरहेको छ अर्को अघिको
म अलिकति चाहिँ त्यो उसमा पनि एड गरिदिएँ यसैमा लाइक तिनै कुरालाई समेट्दै गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ आई थिङ्क यसमा हामीले लिएको अप्रोच भिक्टिम सेन्ट्रिक अप्रोच अलट हामीले जुन तरिकाले केसहरू हेरिरहेको छौँ त्यो भिक्टिम सेन्ट्रिक लेन्सले गर्दाखेरि पनि जुन त्यो नम्बर छ नि होइन वा म एउटा सिम्पल कसरी नम्बर उ गर्छौँ भन्दा चाहिँ हामीले एउटा कुनै केस आइहाल्यो मानिलिउँ अब 2025 सकिन लाग्यो 2026 को जनवरीको फर्स्ट विकमा वी गेट अ न्यू ग्रिभेन्स भने त्यसको कोड 202601 हुनेवाला छ होइन सो बेसिकली टाइटलमा नै हामीले नम्बर अफ केसेस कुन नम्बरको हो त्यो केसको भनेर त्यसरी ट्र्याक गरिरहेको हुन्छौँ तर हाम्रो लागि चाहिँ त्यो किन अलिकति फल्टी मेजर हुन पनि जान्छ भने एउटा चाहिँ हजुरले भन्नुभयो त्यो ग्राफ माथि गएपछि तल आउनुपर्छ आई डोन्ट थिङ्क वी आर एट द्याट पोइन्ट वेयर ठ्याक्कै हामी त्यो तल आउन सक्छौँ कि कल्चर हामीले ट्राई पनि गरिरहेको हुनौँ होइन तर कलेजमा देयर इज अ लट अफ थिङ्स हामीले गरिरहेको एफर्ट सँगसँगै पनि स्टाफहरू कति चेन्ज भइरहनु हुन्छ उहाँहरूलाई कन्टिन्युसली हामीले त्यो कल्चरमा ढाल्न या कल्चरमा कन्ट्रिब्युट गर्न और सिक्न पनि हामीले पुस गर्नु परिरहेको हुन्छ स्टुडेन्ट्स पनि कतिजना मास्टर्सको भए 2 वर्षमा फेरिनुहुन्छ, 4 वर्षमा फेरिनुहुन्छ। सो आउटसाइड अफ द कलेज, आउटसाइड हाम्रो कन्ट्रोल भएको एस्पेक्ट्सहरूले गर्दाखेरि नि त्यो कल्चर कस्तो बिल्ड भएको छ होइन, त्यो पनि हामीले रिफ्लेक्ट गरि नै रहनु परेको छ कि। जसरी अहिले नेपालकै हेऱ्यो भने नि 2025 र 2021-22, and because we work with a lot of young people नि त अहिले we're seeing a lot of radicalization, anti-gender movement देखिरहेको छौँ होइन। अनि जुनमा आएर अहिले चाहिँ कति कुराहरू मेबी 3-4 वर्ष अगाडि नर्मलाइज थिएन होला, अहिले आएर नर्मलाइज भएको छ। कति कुरा 3-4 वर्ष अगाडि नर्मलाइज्ड थियो होला जुन अहिले छैन होइन। सो कल्चर पनि चेन्ज भएर गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ त्यो जुन हजुरले पोइन्ट भन्नु नि ड्रपवाला चाहिँ कस्तो त्यो कल्चर नै हामीले स्ट्याटिक राख्न नसक्ने भएर चाहिँ त्यो पोइन्ट एक्सपेक्ट गर्न चाहिँ हामीलाई पनि गाह्रो हुन्छ या प्रिडिक्ट गर्न पनि गाह्रो हुन्छ होइन। नम्बर अफ केसेसमा चाहिँ हामीले we have a certain number of cases. For example, I think 2024 को लागि we had a total of 5 cases. I think 5 cases थियो होइन। त्यसरी we have the number of cases, तर कस्तो भने a lot of the times they don't tell us much कि हाम्रो लागि चाहिँ होइन। सो त्यो भएर नि हामीले सो त्यो पोइन्टमा हामी पुग्न सकेका छैनौँ वेयर कल्चरले गर्दाखेरि त्यो इन अ वे प्रोटेक्ट भन्दा पनि जस्ट लाइक त्यो प्रिभेन्टिभ हुने गरी चाहिँ हामी कल्चरमा पुग्न सकेको छैन अनफर्चुनेटली। अर्को भनेको चाहिँ पुलिस प्रशासनकोमा आई डोन्ट ह्याभ एनिथिङ टु एड बिकज अगेन त्यही अपिल भइहाल्यो भने लट अफ द टाइम्स रेकमेन्डेसन इम्प्लिमेन्ट भन्छ भने चाहिँ कहिलेकाहीँ जसलाई भएको छ त्यो मान्छेले साइन इन गर्नुपर्छ कि। फर इक्जाम्पल त्यो मान्छेलाई सस्पेन्सन भएको छ, त्यो मान्छेलाई रेस्टिगेसन भएको छ, त्यो मान्छेलाई टेम्पोररी लाइक मेबी क्लास चेन्ज भएको छ होला। लट अफ द टाइम्स कुनै बेला रिटर्न अपोलोजी हुनसक्छ। रिटर्न अपोलोजीमा उनीहरूको सिग्नेचर हुनुपर्छ। त्यो नै अपिल लाइक इफ दे डु नट वान्ट टु सबमिट द अपोलोजी भने उनीहरूले इमेलै गर्न पायो होइन, उनीहरूले इन्फर्म नै गर्न पायो होइन। त्यो भइसकेपछि वन्स दे त्यो सिग्नेचर गर्नु भनेको चाहिँ एक्सेप्टेन्स भयो, बट बिफोर द्याट रिपिटेडली गर्न मिल्यो कि रिइन्भेस्टिगेसन ओपन गर्नु भनेर नि भन्न पाइयो। वी हेभ ह्याड पिपल हु हेभ आस्क्ड टु एभिडेन्स छ भनेर भनेको थियो, एभिडेन्स हेरेर रिकमेन्डेसन पाइसकेपछि पनि देयर आर पिपल वेयर लाइक हुन्छ नि म आई वाज नट इन द पोजिसन टु रिमेम्बर वाट वाज ह्यापनिङ एन्ड आई वान्ट टु सी द त्यो एभिडेन्स भनेर भन्दाखेरि एभिडेन्स हेर्ने पनि अपिल गर्नुभएको छ कतिजनाहरूले होइन। कतिजनाहरूले इफ दे वान्ट टु दे क्यान अल्सो मेबी रिड्युस द रेकमेन्डेसन द रेपरेसन द्याट हेज बिन प्रोभाइडेड। सो अपिल भनेको चाहिँ डिरेक्टली इमेलको थ्रु पनि गर्न पायो या कुरा गरेर पनि गर्न पायो, अनि डिफ्रेन्ट फर्म्समा अपिल गर्न पायो। अनि या सो क्रिमिनल अफेन्सको कुरा त जस्ट पहिला नै नेचर कसरी वान एडिसनल थिङ द्याट आई लाइक टु एड ठ्याक्कै स्वेले भन्नुभएकोमा चाहिँ जुन लिगलवाला केसेसहरू हामीले पहिला नै पुलिस प्रशासन इन्भल्भ भइसक्यो भने वाट वी क्यान अफर एज OSRL इज किङ्समा उहाँलाई जसरी ट्रिट हुन्छ किङ्समा चाहिँ भिक्टिम सेन्ट्रिक ग्रुपमा बिकज दे हेभ बिन अ भिक्टिम उहाँलाई कसरी सपोर्ट गर्न सक्छौँ। एकाडेमिक्सको कुरा गर्नु पऱ्यो बट दे डोन्ट फिल कम्फर्टेबल विल टक टु द एकाडेमिक्स। साइकोसोसियल सपोर्ट चाहिएको छ विल लिङ्क देम होइन। केही नभए पनि भेन्टिङ स्पेस चाहिएको छ, कुरा मात्र गर्नु परेछ भने पनि वी आर अवेलेबल फर द्याट। सो थिङ्स द्याट आर अन्डर आवर कन्ट्रोल फ्रम डकुमेन्टेसन टु इन्स्योरिङ द्याट college, if the victim chooses to come to the college or chooses to talk to people at the college भने त्यो बेला चाहिँ हाम्रो कन्ट्रोलमा भएको कुरा त्यो हो। र हाउ डु वी इन्स्योर द्याट इज सेफ फर द victim, जुन अगाडिको भनेको जस्तै डिग्निफाइड फर द victim इज इन पावर र victimको एजेन्सी चाहिँ खोसिएको छैन भन्ने इन्स्योर गर्न चाहिँ दोज आर द थिङ्स द्याट वी क्यान डु। अनि द्याट चाहिँ वी प्रायोरिटाइज इन अ वे।
I studied at Thames International College. So हाम्रो थेम्समा चाहिँ ह्यारासमेन्टको केसेस हेर्नु भनेर OSRL जस्तो चाहिँ छैन अहिलेसम्म। म ग्रेजुएट भएको 2 वर्ष भयो। सो हाम्रोमा चाहिँ OSA भन्ने छ, अफिस अफ स्टुडेन्ट अफेयर्स भनेर। OSAले चाहिँ अब ह्यारासमेन्टको केसहरू इस्युहरू आयो भने त्यो पनि हेर्ला। तर हाम्रो OSAमा चाहिँ टाइममा चाहिँ 1-on-1 एभ्री फ्याकल्टीको स्टुडेन्टहरूलाई चाहिँ टाइम दिएर डिपार्टमेन्ट मेम्बर्सहरूले चाहिँ सेसन दिनुहुन्थ्यो म फर्स्ट सेकेन्ड इयर पढ्दाखेरिमा। अनि टाइममा चाहिँ सर्वे जस्तो क्वेसन्सहरू पनि पठाउनुहुन्थ्यो। त्यो सर्वे क्वेसन्समा चाहिँ अब टिचरले कस्तो पढाइरहेछ अनि हामी चाहिँ अब आइडेन्टिटीको कुराहरूमा त्यस्तो रिलेटेड क्वेसन्सहरू चाहिँ पठाइरहेको हुन्थ्यो त्यसमा चाहिँ कन्फिडेन्सियालिटी पनि मेन्टेन भएको हुन्थ्यो सो माई क्वेसन इज जसले एन्सर गर्दा पनि हुन्छ तपाईँहरूको ओएसआरले चाहिँ कम्प्लेन आइसकेपछि मात्र चाहिँ इनिसिएटिभ्स अथवा एक्सनहरू लिनुहुन्छ कि अथवा यस्तै टाइममा चाहिँ इभन दो देयर आर नो कम्प्लेन्स सर्वे क्वेसन जस्तो पठाएर सिचुएसन रिड गर्ने इन्भाइरोमेन्ट रिड गर्ने कुराहरू हुन्छ कि हुँदैन द्याट इज वान क्वेसन अनि अदर इज मोड्युल कोर्स कुराहरू गर्नुभयो 6 to 8 विक्सको कोर्स जस्तो हुन्छ भनेर भन्नुभयो सो वी ह्याड एउटा कोर्स पोलिटिकल थट्स भन्ने यो चाहिँ कुनै पनि डिपार्टमेन्टबाट होइन हाम्रो कोर्समा एउटा एक्स्ट्रा भनेर हामीलाई राखेको थियो यसले हाम्रो बडी अफ नलेजलाई बढाउनुको लागि थियो सो हाम्रो यो कोर्समा चाहिँ टेक्स्ट बेस्ड कुराहरू रिसर्च आर्टिकल्सहरू फरेन अथवा नेपाली स्कलर्सहरूले लेखेको रिसर्च आर्टिकल्सहरू चाहिँ हामीले पढेर आएर डिस्कस गर्ने जस्तो खालको हुन्थ्यो सो तपाईँहरूको यो 6 to 8 विक्सको स्प्यानमा चाहिँ अब त्यस्तै टेक्स्ट बेस्ड खालको कुराहरू चाहिँ डिस्कसन हुन्थ्यो अथवा चाहिँ तपाईँहरूको आएको कम्प्लेन्सको बेसिसमा चाहिँ यस्तो यस्तो खालको कम्प्लेन्सहरू आएको छ भनेर त्यो बारेमा डिस्कसन हुन्थ्यो अथवा चाहिँ त्यो सेसनहरूमा चाहिँ प्रोफेसनल्स अथवा एक्सपर्ट्सहरूलाई बोलाएर तपाईँहरूले अघि जुन रेप कल्चरको कुराहरूको बारेमा कन्भर्सेसन हुन्छ सो के हुन्छ ओभर त्यो 6 to 8 विक्सको स्प्यानमा चाहिँ अलिकति ब्रिफली
I think thank you for sharing about OSA पनि हामीले जस्तो OSRLबाट कम्प्लेन्ट आउने टाइमको त ह्यान्डल गर्छौँ होइन अनि त्यसो राम्रो क्वेसन अफ कम्प्लेन्ट नआएको बेला चाहिँ हाउ डु वी असेस वाट स्टुडेन्ट्स आर गोइङ थ्रु त्यो सर्वेहरू भइरहेको छ कि छैन भनेर होइन हामीले पनि आई थिङ्क त्यो सर्वेहरू चाहिँ सेन्ड आउट गर्ने प्र्याक्टिस चाहिँ अझै बेटर गर्नुपर्ने छ तर आई थिङ्क हाम्रो लागि वाट हेज बिन वर्किङ आउट भनेको चाहिँ त्यो क्रस कोलाबोरेसन विथ डिफ्रेन्ट डिपार्टमेन्ट्स पनि हो बिकज आई थिङ्क ओएसआरएलले नै सबै गर्न खोज्यो कल्चर भनेको ओएसआरएलले मात्रै बनाउनु सक्दैन पनि होइन अनि इभन लाइक स्टुडेन्ट्सहरूको वेलबिङ चेकदेखि लिएर स्टुडेन्ट्सहरू हाउ दे आर थिङ्किङ भन्ने कुरा पनि हामी मात्रै गर्न सक्दैन सो वी हेभ टु वर्क विथ लाइक डिफ्रेन्ट डिपार्टमेन्ट्सहरू अनि अहिले चाहिँ एउटा अगेन प्रोग्राम लिडहरूबाटै आएको इनिसिएटिभ छ यो चाहिँ हरेक स्टुडेन्टको एउटा ग्रुपलाई चाहिँ मेन्टर जस्तो असाइन गरेको छ होइन मेन्टर चाहिँ फुल टाइम फ्याकल्टी अफ विदिन द कलेज नै भयो होइन एउटा चाहिँ मेन्टर्सहरू असाइन गर्छ अनि अर्को चाहिँ ठ्याक्क ओएसआरएलकै मोड्युल भने जस्तो प्रोफेसनल डेभलपमेन्टमा चाहिँ एउटा गोल सेटिङको मोड्युल जस्तो किङ्सको यो 4 इयर्समा चाहिँ स्टुडेन्ट्सहरूको गोल्सहरू चाहिँ के हो अनि हाउ दे वान्ट टु अचिभ द्याट भनेर सो त्यो गोल सेटिङको मोड्युल र मेन्टर्सहरू सँग चाहिँ क्लोजली वर्क गरेर सो मेन्टर्सहरू चाहिँ काइन्ड अफ नो स्टुडेन्ट्सहरू वाट दे वेयर दे आर अनि कस्तो चाहिँ एक्सपिरियन्स भइरहेको छ भनेर हल्का यो चाहिँ आई थिङ्क प्रिभेन्टेटिभ मेजर नै हो विच ओएसआरएलको इनिसिएटिभ होइन बट काइन्ड अफ like goes along really well with what OSRL is trying to do. So त्यो again as a department एक्लै काम गर्नु भन्दाखेरि पनि that cross collaboration HR को डिपार्टमेन्ट होस् अथवा प्रोग्राम लिड्सहरूको डिपार्टमेन्ट होस् अथवा प्रोफेसनल डेभलपमेन्ट हेर्ने स्टुडेन्ट्सहरूको करियर सर्भिस हेर्ने डिपार्टमेन्ट होस् सो त्यो आई थिङ्क द्याट कोलाबोरेसन is important, especially building allies को लागि and creating that larger culture and community. हाम्रो यो module sessions चाहिँ how we decide भन्दाखेरि a lot is your identity related पनि reflecting on your own identity हामीले यो identity wheelहरूकोमा activities or design it's mostly like activity based and reflective खालीको module हो entirely module they have to reflect on themselves they have to reflect on their power privilege हरूदेखि लिएर so त्यस्तो topicsहरू चाहिँ introduce गर्छौँ अनि कतिपय टाइम यो केसेसहरू जुन ग्रिभेन्सेसमा आउँछ हामीले चाहिँ सर्टेन केस स्टडिजहरू अनोनिमिटी मेन्टेन गर्दै अनि हल्का अभियसली ट्विक्सहरू गरेर वी फर्म केसेसहरू अनि त्यो केसेसहरू चाहिँ स्टुडेन्ट्सहरूलाई सेयर गरेर अगेन भिक्टिम सेन्ट्रिकको बारे एक्सप्लेन गर्नु छ भने यो प्रोसेसमा कुन कुन ठाउँमा चाहिँ भिक्टिम सेन्ट्रिक थियो कुन कुन ठाउँमा चाहिँ भिक्टिम ब्लेमिङ थियो भनेर सो त्यस्तो केस एनालिसिसहरूको एक्टिभिटीहरू पनि गर्छौँ त्यसै गरेर प्रोफेसनल्सहरू चाहिँ कतिपय आई थिङ्क हामीले यो अनलाइन हरासमेन्टको केसेसमा वी हेभ रिच्ड आउट टु प्रोफेसनल्सहरू अनि अहिले रिसेन्टली गरेको छैनौँ बट थ्याङ्क यू फर रिमाइन्डिङ आई थिङ्क द्याट हेज बिन अ ग्रेट एडिसन पनि
अब हामी अन्ततिर आइसकेका छौँ लास्टमा एउटा जति क्वेसन चाहिँ लिन सक्छौँ कसैको छ भने
अरूको छैन भने मेरो
तपाईँको पनि हुन्छ
सुष्टाजीले आफ्नो प्रस्तुतिको सुरुमा चाहिँ आई थिङ्क इन भेरी क्विक पासिङ यु सेड यो अफिस चाहिँ ह्युम्यानिटिज स्टुडेन्ट्सहरूको मा गर्न पाएको सो आई वाज इन ग्रेजुएट स्कुल 40 years ago अनि I was first a PhD student in economics. We had people from the Wharton School, UPenn. So I know a little bit about stereotypes about business students and humanities students. And later I became a historian, so I know that word. But I don't know what you were referring to. About 30 वर्ष भइसक्यो त्यो पहिलो कुरा, plus the context is very different. This is Nepal, right? So के भन्या होला त्यति बेला तपाईले के भन्नु भयो होला भन्नु न.
I think humanities को जस्तो यो डिफ्रेन्ट आइडेन्टिटी रिलेटेड कुराहरू नै भनौँ न होइन यो जुन सोसल स्ट्रक्चर छ सोसल हायरार्की छ यस्तो कुराहरू जस्तो फर इक्जाम्पल हरासमेन्ट नै भनेपछि हरासमेन्ट डज कम फ्रम अ प्लेस अफ पावर एन्ड अब्युज अफ पावर अनि पावर र अब्युज अफ पावरहरूलाई मैले भन्नु खोजेको चाहिँ ह्युम्यानिटिजको स्टुडेन्ट्सहरूले इनडेप्थ पढ्न परिरहेको हुन्छ जुन बिजनेस स्टुडेन्ट्सहरू दे डोन्ट ह्याभ टु डेल्भ इन टु द्याट सोसाइटीको बारे के भन्छ टपिक्सहरू त्यस्तो धेरै इनडेप्थमा सो हामीले गर्न खोजेको कामहरू हरासमेन्ट किन हुन्छ भन्ने कुराहरू होइन द्याट हरासमेन्ट के भन्छ के कुराले भइरहेको हुन्छ हरासमेन्टसँग अरू के कुराहरू चाहिँ लिङ्क छ भन्ने कुरा एक्सप्लेन गर्नको लागि चाहिँ वी फेल्ट ह्युम्यानिटिज स्टुडेन्ट भएको अलिक इजिली बुझाउन सजिलो हुन्थ्यो कि रादर देन बिजनेस स्टुडेन्ट्सहरू भनेर जस्ट बेस्ड अन देयर ब्याकग्राउन्ड
Also, I'll just add to that one because I was a business student at King's. Our master's I'm trying to apply to courses that are more humanities and social sciences related. I think me as a member of OSRL, as a student member, like I would hear things like, I think I deliberately didn't make it as visible in my classroom that I was a part of OSRL. They already knew me as the woke kind of wala, but then I was good at studies and they needed my assignments to copy off. So this my further but someone told me, shouldn't you rather spend time learning about share market? Your major is investment in economics and I don't know anything about that. Okay? So there's me. I'm also going to point out Prashana, because Prashana was a graduate, but open student member, and we have had a conversation about this a lot of times. Okay? So business student, like BBA is the least acceptable. Like there's the course this acceptability is BBA is the lowest you can go without going into humanities. Preferable STEM courses and especially engineering, medical, law then you can do BBA. BBA is the minimum. And I also was forced to do BBA too. But my interest was always in humanities, right? But then there were business students who were so business minded that we once had to have this conversation about if a factory burns down, and rescue if someone if someone loses their ability in any way, अनि उहाँले as a disabled, like if they have to live a disabled life, त्यो भयो भने त्यो अर्गनाइजेसन कुनै पनि रूपमा लायबल हुन्छ कि हुँदैन भन्दा फ्ल्याट आउट 90% of the class said no. अनि त्यो the 90% किनभने there were 10 students, 9 of them said yes. I was the only one who said no. अनि त्यो बेला मलाई बुझाउन गाह्रो भइरहेको थियो that I think अनि in a way stereotype हो, but I think 4 वर्ष पढ्दै जाँदा 3 वर्षसम्म you learn so many dehumanizing things. You learn about things that are posited as science, but under like I don't want to get into critique of capitalism, तर कस्तो त्यो जुन learning environment नै बनाएको हुन्छ त्यसमा चाहिँ you do not think about yourself as a person, you think about stakeholder. Like हाम्रोमा त भन्ने कुरा भनेको त्यही हो नि त, stakeholder, wealth maximize गरेर stakeholder, that's the goal of why you're studying this, that is why you work भन्ने भएपछि a lot of people stop thinking of them as a human, themselves as a human. They also stop thinking of others as a human, and that includes teachers होला, staff होला, अनि त्यो जुन dehumanizing environment when you try to talk about privilege, when you try to talk about identities, त्यो चाहिँ झन् गाह्रो हुँदै जाँदो रहेछ. अनि लाइक हाम्रो लागि चाहिँ as students, when we are students, त्यो एउटा स्पेस बनेको थियो जहाँ we could have a class and we'll rant about how dehumanizing the class felt. अनि अब यो compare I'll also compare it to Thames because I have a lot of friends from Thames, उनीहरुकोमा चाहिँ there were spaces curated to talk about identity. Diversity day भनेर हुन्थ्यो where people acknowledge the diversity. Business environment मा भएपछि it was like everyone is the same, nobody is different भनेर. The only difference it might be is someone is more entrepreneurial, someone is not भनेर हुन्थ्यो. तर business कुनै job join गर्नुमा, business खोल्नुमा, सक्सेसफुली रन गर्नुमा privilege को कुरा हैन, अनि त्यसपछि generations को ethnicity को lot of those कुराहरु नै आउँदैन थियो हैन. So comparing it to what I've heard what humanities undergraduate गरेको my friends say, there were classes where they talked about their identities. आफू म आदिवासी मान्छे हो, यस्तो 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 भनेर बोल्न पाएको थियो भनेर भन्थ्यो. कसैले I was as a woman यस्तो 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 भन्दाखेरि even the men in the class would listen भन्ने खालको कुरा आउँथ्यो. त्यो actively deny हुने चाहिँ भइरहेको थिएन. अनि I don't think this is just a fault of King's College. I think it's the way in which undergraduate business courses are set up. So I think early there's a lot more humanity because focus नै यस्तो मोड्युलहरु पनि आएको छ. But there are other modules like goal setting where they get to know each other as humans, हैन. So that is being actively challenged. तर because, and I'm not saying it's the fault of the student, but त्यो कोर्सेसहरुले र the need of the course ले गर्दाखेरि नै अलिअलि shape गर्दै जान्छ where they feel the need to not see themselves as human.
अब अन्तिममा सेरनको एउटा क्वेशन छ, restrictions.
दुईटा छोटो प्रश्न है. One is तपाईले यो disrespect, harassment के and there's a continuum हैन, एउटा चाहिँ disrespect. यो disrespect को परिभाषा के छ? And what are the instances that you encounter? And त्यसको समाधान चाहिँ कसरी गरिन्छ? Because it's a little more fuzzy भनौँ न हैन. And second question चाहिँ यो तपाईहरुको module or whatever is self-reflexivity, power, सबै पढाउँदा do you include the word entitlement? अनि यदि entitlement प्रयोग गर्ने हो भने चाहिँ how do you do it? Because it becomes much more aggressive, entitlement भन्ने बित्तिकै. त्यो तपाईले प्रयोग गर्नुहुन्छ हुँदैन? A little bit about strategy.
I think the entitlement को कुरा चाहिँ we link it with privilege नै. जस्तो हामीले privilegeकै टपिकहरु पढाउँदाखेरि चाहिँ हामी कुन एस्पेक्टमा चाहिँ we are privileged भनेर. अनि I think त्यो entitlement चाहिँ necessary classमै नै entitlement भन्ने छैन हैन. Around like we make them reflect on उनीहरुको अहिलेसम्मको के privilegesहरु पाएको छ, त्यो privilegesहरुलाई have they misused it, अथवा like how have they used their privileges भन्ने त्यस्तो कुराहरुमा चाहिँ रिफ्लेक्ट गराउँछौं. अर्को यो entitlement भन्दाखेरि पनि I think हामीले harmसँग चाहिँ जोड्छौं होला हैन. We do emphasize that everyone is capable of harm, including us. We have harmed in our lives, we are capable of harm. So I think by accepting that, we can move towards discussing, okay, now how do we hold ourselves accountable भन्ने कुराहरू. So I think त्यस्तो टपिक्सहरूमा जानको लागि चाहिँ हामी आफै पनि एउटा लेभल अफ भल्नरेबिलिटीमा चाहिँ जानुपर्छ फर स्टुडेन्ट्स टु open up and like be alikati feel safe to respect on say their own entitlement or their own privileges. So I think that's how we are navigating. I mean, your disrespect ko pani obviously there's this continuum नै हैन जुन levels of disrespect पनि हुन्छ. So हामीले त्यो OSRL लाई अलिकति वाइडन गरेको चाहिँ कतिपय टाइम disrespect feel भयो भनेर they can just come and talk to us without needing to take any actions. कहिलेकाहीँ बोल्न मात्र परिरहेको हुन्छ, भेन्ट मात्र गर्न परिरहेको हुन्छ हैन. सो सानो कुरा हो भने पनि आऊ भन्छ अनि हामीले त्यतिखेर चाहिँ अब कतिपय टाइम सानो कुरा हुँदाखेरि पनि ओके दिस इज लाइक अलिकति मोर देन सानो कुरा भनेर त्यही अनुसारले चाहिँ वी navigate that discussion. But I think starting with like anytime you feel alikati disrespected by anyone on campus, there is that space to talk भनेर यो पनि अगेन सुरुमै हामीले मोड्युलहरुमै मेन्सन चाहिँ गर्छौं यस्तो कुराहरु.
तपाईहरु केही थप्नु छ?
Very quickly म त्यो डिसरेस्पेक्ट को चाहिँ म एक्जाम्पल एउटा दिइहाल्छु हैन. डिसरेस्पेक्ट को चाहिँ एकजना एमए मा पढ्ने. Now this is a person who is my friend outside the college. So उसले रिसेन्टली एमबी जोइन गरेको थियो अनि उसले नै भनेको थियो भने के भनेको थियो भने एउटा टिचरले चाहिँ लाइक देयर वाज एन इन्स्टेन्स वेयर के गर्रा भनेर एउटा टिचरले नै सोध्यो रे. अनि त्यसपछि माई फ्रेन्ड द एमबी को स्टुडेन्ट फ्रेन्ड इज नट इम्पोर्टेन्ट, इट्स द बिङ द किङ्स को स्टुडेन्ट इज द मोर इम्पोर्टेन्ट आइडेन्टिटी हियर. बट अनि द पर्सन शेयर यस्तो यस्तो म यो असाइनमेन्टमा काम गरिरहेको छु एन्ड द टिचर वाज लाइक म सोधेको थिएँ तँलाई. And so it's something that we like that we might ethikai neglect होला हैन, especially if we know know what the teacher is like, because अब full time staff हो भने हामीहरुले त गर्छौं नि त, तर it is completely the right of the individual to feel disrespecting. So उसले चाहिँ हामीसँग आएर कुरा गर्यो अनि we ask a person what is it that you want out of this? Do you want an apology? Do you want to take any further action? No, I just wanted someone to hear this. Ani tyo bela because what are the things that they could do bhanera pani हामीले suggest गर्छौं नि त. So I remember what I said was you किङ्स मा चाहिँ 2 months को कोर्स हुन्छ, त्यसमा 3 चोटी टिचर फिडब्याक हुन्छ के, फ्याकल्टीलाई फिडब्याक दिन पाउँछ, पुट इट इन द फ्याकल्टी फिडब्याक. त्यो भइसकेपछि चाहिँ मैले गएर प्रोग्राम लिडसँग चाहिँ एकचोटी चेक इन गराएको थिएँ. यो फिडब्याक आएको थियो, have you done anything with this, have you conveyed this to the professor भन्दाखेरि yes भनेर कुरा आएको थियो. And that was it. That is the kind of that was the justice that the victim needed. अनि again I think I get also good disrespect को कुरा पनि because a lot of the time age को factor आइहाल्यो भने हैन, or particular ethnicities को मान्छेहरु या कसैको बोलीले गर्दाखेरि disrespect भनेर feel गरेकोमा चाहिँ I think कहिलेकाहीँ त्यो मान्छेले भेन्ट गर्ने स्पेस पनि पाउनु पर्यो. बट अल्सो फर्स्टमै हामी ठ्याक्कै त्यो भनेको जसरी नै वी अल्सो डिसाइड द भ्यालिडिटी अफ द केस के, द्याट्स द फर्स्ट थिङ वी डु. अनि इफ वी फिल लाइक अनि त्यो भएको पनि छ बिकज एउटा एक्सपिरियन्समा चाहिँ एउटा सपोर्ट स्टाफले मलाई डिसरेस्पेक्ट गर्यो भनेर एकजना स्टुडेन्टले भनेको थियो. बट अपन फर्दर इन्भेस्टिगेसन र एभिडेन्स अर्को जो फुल टाइम स्टाफ हुनुहुन्थ्यो जसले चाहिँ आफ्नो एक्सपिरियन्स सेयर गर्नुभयो, त्यो बेला वाट वी रियलाइज्ड वाज it was not a case of disrespect. It was maybe a case of the सबै पार्टीहरुको सुनेपछि चाहिँ it felt like a case of miscommunication. So यो केसमा चाहिँ for what happened reparation ma was the student got an apology, but not from the support staff, because support staff ko side but it was not the disrespect. Okay? So apology भयो that the person felt that way अनि whatever अनि अब appeal गर्न मन लाग्यो भने they can absolutely appeal that हैन. तर सपोर्ट स्टाफलाई पनि त्यो apology चाहिँ गयो because the support staff was not found to be at fault के. त्यो it was like अलिकति टोनल त्यो ठाडो नेपालीमा भनेकोले गर्दाखेरि त्यस्तो भएको भएर the support staff also got an apology. अनि दुवै जनालाई do you feel justly treated भन्दा yes भनेपछि great. Now that's the end of the investigation भन्ने कुरा निक्ल्यो. अनि
हुन्छ, हाम्रो औपचारिक छलफललाई चाहिँ हामी यहीँ अन्त्य गर्छौँ। बाँकी छलफल चाहिँ यहाँहरूले चिया खाँदै पनि बसेर गर्न सक्नुहुनेछ। हाम्रो यो आजको यो महत्त्वपूर्ण छलफलको लागि र समयको लागि चाहिँ हाम्रो स्वेच्छाजी र सुशोभनजीलाई धेरै धेरै धन्यवाद र तपाईँ सम्पूर्ण सहभागीलाई पनि सहभागी भइदिनु भएकोमा धेरै धेरै धन्यवाद। हाम्रो अर्को छलफल चाहिँ आइतबारको रहेको छ। त्यसमा पनि यहाँहरूले आफ्नो समय रुचि भएको खण्डमा चाहिँ सहभागिता जनाइदिनु होला। हस्, धन्यवाद, नमस्ते।